The Avioane Craiova IAR-93B Vultur is a jointly developed Romanian and Yugoslav cast jet. Both in real life and in War Thunder, it's certainly unique and offers a fascinating insight into the history of Cold War aviation. Join me in this video as we take a dive into the Vultur, going over its history, its state in War Thunder, and how to play it. During 1970, Romania and Yugoslavia, both communist states that, to varying degrees, sought to reduce their over-reliance on the Soviet Union, began discussion regarding the development of a new ground attack-focused fighter aircraft. On the 20th of May 1971, the Yugoslavian and Romanian governments signed an agreement that formed YuRom, a joint research and development venture between the two nations. The aircraft was intended to replace Yugoslavia's lightly armed J-21s and F-84s, as well as Romania's MiG-15s and MiG-17s, and called for a lightweight airframe with a simple, rugged design that could benefit from locally produced equipment, could operate from improvised airstrips, and was both reliable and easy to maintain. The resulting design was a twin-engine plane with high-mounted wings that were swept back. The design was viewed as emphasizing simplicity and modernity, and due to a desire to avoid one nation upstaging the other, it was given two names. In Romania, it was known as the IAR-93 Vultur, while in Yugoslavia it was called the J-22 Oral. The design team originally wanted a supersonic, single-engine plane, but the United Kingdom refused to sell them the license to produce the desired British engines, mostly due to Romania being part of the Warsaw Pact. Instead, the weaker Rolls-Royce Viper was chosen, as Yugoslavia already had experience with it. Due to this, none of the earlier batches would have afterburners, and would be mostly restricted to reconnaissance missions. During the 1980s, both countries rectified this with slightly different variations to use afterburning engines. Romania's first prototype made its first flight on the 31st of October 1974, on the exact same day that Yugoslavia did, and on the 18th of July 1975, the aircraft was formally presented to Ceausescu. During testing, 3 planes, including the first prototype, crashed and were lost, although only one pilot out of 4, one was a 2-seat, was killed, owing to their Martin Baker 00 ejection seats. The IAR-93 was unveiled to the public on the 23rd of August 1979 and entered service in 1981, with 26 single-seaters and 9 2-seat trainers being built. After the initial IAR-93A, featuring the non-afterburning Rolls-Royce Viper Mark 632-41 was completed, work began on an upgrade. The new engines weren't yet ready, so an interim version, the IAR-93MB, was made, MB meaning Motor de Bază, or basic engine. This had improvements, including increased fuel capacity, upgraded hardpoints, a revised wing and leading edge extensions, while the ventral fins, inboard wing fences, and forward fuselage strakes were removed, and first flew in 1982 with 15 built, all single-seat. The final version, the IAR-93B, first flew in 1985 with the desired Viper Mark 633-47 engines, which were finally capable of afterburning. It entered service in 1987 with 27 single-seaters and 7 two-seaters built, until production closed in 1992 after the end of the Cold War. The last IAR-93s were retired in 1998, and the plane itself never saw service. There was interest from both Iran and Mauritania to buy the Vultur, Iran needing something easier to maintain in the final phase of the Iran-Iraq War, and Mauritania in the 1990s wanting a modification for maritime patrol and fisheries surveillance, although both deals fell through. In War Thunder, the IAR-93B is found at rank 6 and was added in the November 2024 Flight of the Vulture event. It was part of the revenue share program, being made by players NovA29, Teodor-san, The Flying Noob, and Reg25 RUS, instead of by Gaijin themselves. It's powered by two Rolls-Royce Viper Mark 633-47s, which each put out 1,540 kgf of thrust dry, or 1,960 wet. These push it to a maximum top speed of 1,124 at sea level, with a thrust-to-weight ratio of 0.66. Its rip speed is 1,155 km an hour, or Mach 1.09, so you're unlikely to reach that unless you're in a dive. Its gears will rip at 475 km an hour, while its flaps at full deployment will come off around 400. To power these engines, you have 39 minutes of fuel, with an extra 7 minutes in a drop tank under the fuselage, if you choose to take it. In terms of pull, the airframe can manage 11 Gs or negative 6 Gs, which means you're very unlikely to rip the wings that way. It can pull an instantaneous 30 degrees a second at a little over 700 km an hour, and can sustain 18 degrees a second at around 900. At its own BR, this means that it'll generally beat most heavier planes such as the F-3H, be competitive against planes such as the F-86K, but will struggle against some of the more nimble menaces at the BR, such as the Shenyang F-5 and the Ariete. While the Vulture Lexa radar, it does have an RWR, the SPO-10. This is an H-to-J band system that has 4 sectors and will give you a warning when you're being tracked, but not when you're being launched at, so be careful. It doesn't have any flares or chaff to speak of, unless you want to try bringing some unguided rockets as emergency flares. Speaking of rockets, we'll now move on to armament. Your fixed defensive armament are two 23mm Gush 23Ls mounted at the bottom of the sides of the fuselage, each firing 3,400 rounds per minute with 200 rounds per gun. This works out to around 3.5 seconds of trigger time, which is on the lower side, but your volume of fire is quite nice. They've not got a terribly good trajectory, but being able to put that many rounds on target means that a lot of your kills will be very quick, if you can hit the target. For ground targets, these are aided with CCIP, which also applies for bombs and rockets. On to suspended ordnance now, and first up are your Fox 1 infrared homing missiles. These are the A91s, which are very basic rear aspect missiles with low maneuverability and range, being copies of the R3S, itself a copy of the AIM-9B Sidewinder. While among the worst missiles, they're still missiles, and if used right, they can be really great to have. Next up are your unguided bombs, of which you have 3, the BA-100, BA-250, and BA-500. These are 100, 250, and 500 kilogram bombs respectively, and are very similar to the Soviet Fab series of bombs. They're free-falling and lack any sort of slowed or armor-piercing variants. You can carry up to 3 BA-500s, 5 250s, or 12 100s. Coming in the heavy cavalry major update, the IAR-93B is also getting ZB-500s. These are incendiary bombs that take 2 to finish a base. Finally, we have unguided rockets, of which there are 3. First up are the S-5KPs, which are bog-standard small Soviet rockets. They have small heat warheads, can penetrate up to 250mm, and come in pods of 32, allowing you to bring 4 for a total of 128. Next are the S-24Bs, another standard Soviet rocket, although this time carried individually up to a total of 4. They're HE rockets, have 25 kilos of explosive mass, which goes through 65 mil of armor, meaning they'll kill most vehicles on a direct hit, or lighter ones on a near miss. Finally are your PRN-122s, which are domestically made Romanian rockets. They're HE rockets with 9.7 kilos of explosive mass, similar but slightly smaller than the Soviet S-13, and you carry them in pairs, up to a total of 8. In AirRB, the IAR-93B sits at 9.0, where it's rather quite good. The current matchmaker likes down-tiering it to 8.0 or 8.3, where it kinda destroys everything it faces, and Italy usually gets paired against the US, France, and Israel, so you'll often have plenty of bombers to face. It's not crazy good when up-tiered to 9.7 and above, as it struggles against supersonics when they're being played well, but having 4 missiles allows it to deal with some of them. Its RWR is also a good asset, as you'll sometimes face planes with early radar missiles that are easy to avoid if you know they're coming. When spawning it in, I'd recommend taking 20 minutes of fuel, which should be more than enough to stay in the air for the whole match. You can probably even get away with 15 if you keep an eye on it, as your afterburner doesn't consume much. For loadout, I'd recommend 4 A91s and no drop tank. While you can bomb a base using this loadout, it's much more capable as a fighter. At the start of the match, climb while building up speed. If you're in a down tier, you may run into bombers that make for easy prey, and you'll likely be among the first to reach them. When you're dogfighting, you can use a missile to either kill a slow or low energy enemy, or make an enemy pull to avoid it, setting them up for an easier follow-up shot for another missile or a cannon. You can keep your energy decently well in the horizontal, while going vertical will bleed it very quickly. You have air brakes, so if you find yourself redlining in a dive, you can avoid wing ripping. Your cannons have a very high rate of fire and a relatively low velocity, so make sure to fire in short bursts. As you have 2 Gush 23s, you have an insane burst mass, and as long as you account for them being mounted quite low, they'll obliterate anything in your path. Once the Heavy Cavalry Major Update releases, you'll have access to incendiary bombs. If you're researching the additional missiles, these might be alright to take on the empty pylons, and need 2 to destroy a base. In Ground RB, the IAR-93B sits at 9.3, where it fits into Italy's 9.3 lineup, and competes with the G91Y and G91YS as a CAS option. It's quite comparable in loadout to the G91YS, with CCIP for its weapons, although it carries a better payload. The G91Y, on the other hand, carries AS-30 Nords. These are manually guided ATGMs, which means they're very hard to use, although they offer some standoff if you're good enough. Overall, it comes down to personal preference as to which one to use, but I'd take the Voltur. When you're taking the IAR-93B into ground battles, I'd recommend a loadout containing either the large bombs or the rockets. Generally, focusing on one type makes your run simpler, but if you're bringing rockets, you may as well bring a bomb on the centerline pylon. If enemy air is up, you can bring a couple missiles if you'd like to do some cap, although at 9.3 you're against more capable fighters. At its current price on the Gaijin market, the IAR-93B remains decently more expensive than getting the Ariete on a 50% GE sale, which is arguably a better fighter, has premium RP and SL bonuses, and doesn't need you to spade it. As such, if you're looking to grind the Italian tree, I'd probably recommend grabbing something else, the Ariete if you're looking for a strong option at the same rank. That said, the Voltur is certainly very fun to play, especially in Air RB. Currently, it's the only example of its airframe, although that's changing next update with the J22 M1A coming as a pack premium in the upcoming Heavy Cavalry Major Update. That said, if you want something that's a bit of fun, you're a collector, or you're Romanian and you're just happy you're being mentioned, then it might be right for you. Once you've got your IAR-93B, you're going to want to spade it. There's 2 ways you can go about this, depending on if you want it spaded for Air RB or Ground RB. For Air RB, to get to Tier 4, where the engine and A91s are, we're going to need to grab 3 Tier 3s, so we'll need to grab Offensive 23mm first as a prerequisite. Continue on with G-Suit, new boosters, cover, wings repair, and new 23mm cannons. Now that we're at Tier 3, grab the A91s and engine before going back to grab compressor, airframe, and fuselage repair. Finish it off by grabbing the EFS and the ground ordnance. If you're playing after the release of the upcoming Heavy Cavalry Major Update, you might want to research the ZB500 bombs as soon as possible if you want to try bombing bases until you get your full load of missiles. For Ground RB, we're going to start by grabbing BA250s, S24s, G-Suit, BA500, PRN 122s, and cover. At rank 4, grab engine before working back to compressor, new boosters, wings repair, airframe, and fuselage repair. Next, grab the EFS and A91s before finishing it off with the cannon modifications. And that's it for the IAR-93B as it currently stands in War Thunder. With the Serbian J-22 M1A Oral coming in the upcoming Heavy Cavalry Major Update, I do plan to revisit this airframe in the not too distant future, possibly as the next video if there's enough interest in this one. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, then liking and subscribing would mean a lot to me. If you want to vote for the topic of the next video, there'll be a poll up on my Discord, link in the description. And that's all from me. I've been girltwink, fly safe.